In an era when advanced technologies emerge, it's almost unimaginable to recollect a period in our rural history without electric power, when kerosene lanterns, washboards, and wood-burning stoves were the norm. For Roanoke Electric Cooperative members, it has been a 74-year journey, an evolution of historic triumph that not only serves as our blueprint, but foundation as we embark on a new century of electrification. While densely populated cities relished in the amenities of electric power, almost every rural home and farm were without electricity as late as the mid-1930s, a time of great economic depression and war.
Farmers, even today, have to work, but the work they do today is minuscule when compared to the hard, laborious work that farm women and men had to do before electricity came.
Miles upon miles of remote and undeveloped land made it cost prohibitive for privately owned electric utilities to service Americans who depended on agriculture as a way of life, while at the same time being able to keep costs affordable.
The men had to do most things by hand, and the women had it even tougher because they helped their husbands in the field, and then they would have to go home and cook the meals and serve them and wash the dishes and wash the clothes.
My grandmother and grandfather, Richard and Saluda Moore, who lived in Lamberson in Rich Square, it was a mile back up in the field. It was a long time before they got electricity, so lamplight was quite common.
The idea for federal assistance for rural electrification gained enormous support under the Roosevelt administration. The passage of the Tennessee Valley Authority Act authorized construction of transmission lines in 1933.
Took you a while to get used to them, really, you had never had anything like that, and then all of a sudden you had them. Got rid of the kerosene lamps and the battery radios and all that stuff. It changed your whole life in a way. It brought you to the light, from the darkness to the light.
2 years later, Executive Order 7037 would be signed by FDR to establish the REA. In 1936, a Rural Electrification Act followed suit and made possible a government-facilitated lending program. This would be the glimpse of light that would illuminate the path for what has become Roanoke Electric Cooperative.
They were constantly extending lines right on up through the 50s. And of course, they had to maintain what they had already built.
It was just, it was a little different atmosphere in the rural area country. There was a closeness and a tie that I think it made us certainly a big part of what we are today.
Our electric cooperative was chartered 2 years after the passing of the Rural Electrification Act. A year later, L. Weeks Anderson became our first cooperative manager, leading the charge toward energizing 56 miles of line. There were just 317 members at that time.
We had a woman who lived to be 103, and one of the stories that she would tell is, and they thought they were so much because they had electric lights and us was still reading by lamp. Yeah, that's how she would describe it.
To look now across a lot of what used to be rural settings as they were then without power is just farms, and to see now factories that have created jobs, industry that have come into rural settings to give those rural people the opportunity to go to work and feed their families, that is absolutely profound in many ways. Now because we do have electricity in rural communities, we have expanded on this whole idea of rural economic development.
The first member to set a utility pole in 1938 was Vernon Taylor. He succeeded Weeks as general manager in 1944. Taylor carried the torch for 37 years, expanding electric distribution lines until his retirement in 1981. Eugene W. Brown had been with the organization for 11 years before taking on the role as general manager following Taylor's departure. Brown retired in 1997.
The general manager at that time, as we were known, rather than CEO, had the responsibility to initiate programs and policies and procedures, but they all had to be approved by the board. Roanoke was blessed in having good board members who were conscientious, tried to do their best, and it was blessed in having management and employees who did the same.
The co-op was really in a building stage. We had hardly any three-phase lines. Everything was single phase, and we were in a real building stage.
That's very gratifying to know that I was privileged to work for a corporation which had that spirit and that unity.
Opportunities present themselves on a daily basis when we can make a difference in someone's life. And so to be able to go home each day knowing that you've made some type of impact on whether it was an individual or a group of people for that day is just quite rewarding.
This is where I come in, the fourth general manager of Roanoke Electric Cooperative since 1997. And honored to be the first African American to serve in this capacity, not only in North Carolina, but the nation.
It was under his leadership that we, cooperative, became very familiar with computers. He was is a technological wizard. He is, and he often told us when we would speak to him about being afraid of computers and electronics, and he would tell us, "We're going through it together. I'm gonna take you with me when I go," and that made us feel really good, very comfortable.
The groundwork for my entry to lead our organization forward had been laid many decades earlier. People like Matthew Grant advocated black representation within leadership positions, particularly since blacks made up the majority of the electric co-op's members. Due to his unyielding efforts, members voted in its first black board members in 1969. Grant one and Rascal Gilliam the other. No other electric co-op in North Carolina had African American board members. By 1993, the board had become a black majority and Grant the board's first African American president.
My father was definitely a visionary. Matthew Grant was quiet, very unassuming, and versus his wife Lorenza, who would get straight in a minute. Daddy did his work, we would stay quietly in the back room where it needed to be done.
Matthew Grant and I had many long philosophical discussions. We did not always agree. We would ride to statewide meetings in Raleigh, and sometimes our disagreement would come almost to the point that we wouldn't say anything for miles and miles. But he was a friend to me, and I think that he would tell you if he were here today that I was a friend to him.
In essence, I am Grant's vision. Since our start in a one-room office in Halifax 74 years ago, we have continued to expand our system to over 2,000 miles of line while serving more than 14,500 members in Bertie, Halifax, Hertford, Northampton, Gates, Perquimans, and Chowan Counties.
When I came, we were having frequent outages. Some of them were hard to explain. But over the years, over the past 14 years, with the investments that we've made in our utility, we have reduced that outage time tremendously. And at the end of the day, the thing that scares me the most is making sure that all of our employees and our members and the community are safe, and that nothing happens to them that could detriment their families. So we've raised that awareness probably tenfold.
Today, Roanoke Electric Cooperative has been dubbed as one of the most progressive co-ops by the National Rural Electric Cooperative Community Service Network.
We're just about the community. We're actively involved in our communities. We're local. We employ people who sincerely make an effort, even outside of their jobs.
Our new state-of-the-art Ahoskie-based headquarters was constructed just 2.5 years ago, while our previous location in Rich Square remains home to the Roanoke Center, a multi-purpose facility that serves as a catalyst for providing a better quality of life for our members.
Without them, we wouldn't even have a program. They go out and speak in high schools, they work with the community college, they provide workshops on finances and economic development for the young people that we serve to try to help them move forward and advance in the economy.
How it's impacted my life and my family's life is just numerous programs, economic development programs for small businesses. We had a family business that was impacted with that, different discounts, and you see different benefits to volunteer organizations, churches, nonprofit organizations that the co-op is able to assist with. I think that's very important, and that in fact impacts all of us.
We continue to stand on our cooperative principles: voluntary and open membership, democratic member control, member economic participation, autonomy and independence, education, training and information, and concern for community.
They always are helpful, they're friendly, and they conduct themselves in a manner, and I know it sounds cliche, but it's like working with family.
And while our rich history is our blueprint and our foundation, as we embark upon a new day, none of it would be possible were it not for the torchbearers of the past, dedicated members who lit the way for 21st century electrification.
I would love for REC to, when someone sees Roanoke Electric, they can't tell whether they're in northeastern North Carolina or Charlotte, North Carolina, or any other metropolitan area. As far as electricity is concerned, I want our service to be as good. I would love for us to have the same type of technology and innovation, which we do, as any other utility. Moving forward, I'd like for us to maintain that and to continuously improve the technological advances such as prepaid metering, automated metering, having the ability to pay your utility bill by credit card. So all of those amenities that you could have in an urban location with your utility company, we don't want it to be any different